We continue our exclusive EWTN News RealClear Opinion Research polling. Tonight, we look at how the Catholic vote compares to the general public and how voters feel about Christian values in our society. Joining me now are Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief of RealClear Politics, John Della Volpe, Director of Polling at RealClear Opinion Research, and Matthew Bunson, Executive Editor for EWTN News. Welcome back to all of you. John, let's begin with you. What are some of the areas in the survey where Catholics differ the greatest from the general population?
Well, I think the big issue is what is most important to them? And when they think about voting, and healthcare is the number one most important issue for the Catholic voter as well as the average American voter as well. So that's clear. That is consistent for Catholics as well as non-Catholics, number one. However, Catholics, there are 3 or 4 issues that really stand apart where Catholics are kind of more engaged and focused on these issues. And they tend to be issues related to the economy. Number one, economy, taxes, China trade policy. Those are issues where Catholic voters are more concerned than the average voter. In addition to that, we also see increasing levels of interest for issues related to immigration among the Catholic vote as well.
Very interesting. So Matthew, the survey uniquely drilled down into key aspects of living life as a Catholic.
Yes.
What did you find out about Mass attendance, going to confession, and just praying on a regular basis?
Well, we always go back to that 58 percentile group that consider themselves faithful to all or most of the teachings of the Church. When we look at that group, we see that they have 93% pray at least a week. Most of them pray every day. 66% believe in the real presence of the Eucharist. 56% attend Mass at least once a week. 52% go to confession at least once a year. And then there's even a higher level of activity on all of these when you go to that group that firmly adheres to all teachings of the Church. It is a massive drop from that group to those Catholics who say that they accept some of the teachings of the Church, or the group that says, for example, that the Church has very little influence in their lives. So basically what this tells us is that as a Church, we have a lot of work to do in terms of formation and catechesis of our faithful.
Yes, because of all those issues are so important, those traditional social conservative issues, for example. So, Carl, according to the poll, huge majority of both general voters, Catholic voters in particular, believe religious values, and specifically those Christian values, should play a more important role in our society. What else did we find out about that?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, young people are less likely to answer that question in the affirmative than older voters, which makes you gives you pause. But it also shows you this is still a pretty religious country. It's not the Twitterverse. It's not the secular media out there. And if you've been watching these Democratic presidential debates, the secular nature of it, or even occasionally sort of subtle hostility to religion, makes you think the Democrats may be getting out over their skis a little bit. That's not where the voters are, at least not yet. The other thing I would say about that is that we were talking, Matthew's talking about these active Catholics, and I'd said earlier about how on some issues they mirror evangelical Protestants, and the obvious issue is abortion, and nothing's changed there. And evangelical Protestants have been some of their most prominent evangelical Protestants in this country who worked for George W. Bush have been wringing their hands. Why are evangelicals still staying with President Trump after all the things he's done and said? And it's a fair question, but this data shows that on the issues there's a rationale for it. And on the one issue, abortion, active Catholics and evangelical Protestants are not much different on that abortion. And on this topic, Donald Trump kept his campaign promise, specifically to appoint pro-life federal judges and Supreme Court justices, and he's done that. And so these active Catholics have stayed with him, and what explains it to me is the issues.
So like you said, you mentioned the issue of abortion, healthcare in general. We've mentioned immigration. Matthew, I also want to ask you about what the findings in the poll talk about the impact of the clergy abuse crisis. Do Catholics approve of the job Pope Francis is doing and the U.S. bishops have been doing on that end?
Well, U.S. Catholics approve by a slim majority, 44 to 41% of the job that Pope Francis has done in handling the sex abuse crisis. He is underwater where the average American is concerned, or Americans overall. The U.S. bishops, however, have about a 55% disapproval rate from Catholics in the United States for how they have handled it. So the perception is out there that the bishops need to do a better job at this. But we're also seeing massive majorities of voters, both Catholic and non-Catholic, that the credibility of the church has been manifestly damaged because of the clergy sexual abuse crisis. And that, too, is something that has to be reckoned with by the U.S. bishops.
And just a reminder again for our viewers to continue to pray for that issue. And like you said, they definitely want action and when continue to voice their opinions, do so. All right, so guys, this wraps up 3 days of our coverage of this Real Clear Politics poll. I want to thank each of you for coming in and breaking this down with us. This survey is so important, not just for the upcoming election, but also to talk about the issues within the church as well. So Matthew Bunson, John Della Volpe, Carl Cannon, thank you all so much for your time.